And tonight on the Daily Wrap, after big threats were made against Dr. Ben Carson and Donald Trump, it looks like the Secret Service they wanted is coming their way. And Hillary Clinton may have won last week's Democratic debate, but did her performance help her in the polls? Plus, is the Pope plotting to change the Catholic Church? This is the Daily Wrap, live from New York City. And may God have mercy on your soul. I'm Joe Concho along with Rick Unger. We got a very
religious about it, yeah?
Yeah, well, you know, we're talking Pope tonight, right? I'm sure Donald Trump's happy that he has Secret Service protection. He won't be going to the pearly gates anytime soon.
Well, one hopes not.
One hopes not.
Actually, I think it's Ben Carson who should probably be the happiest, and he was not really seeking it.
It's true.
But apparently needs it.
Trump could afford to pay it on his own, critics say.
Actually, the critics do, and I'm not going to criticize him on that. If somebody else gets it and he has reason to request it, then he should get it too.
Do you think El Chapo will now cease and desist on his $100 million bounty on Donald Trump?
Not if he's really serious about it, no. I'm sure he's not going to let anything stop him, except that he never probably was going to do it anyhow.
He's very crisp tonight. Crisp.
Chris.
To Mr. Chris Wright. She's America's pundit and a Philly attorney. Heather Hansen is back, wearing white, which is rare. Yeah. And finally, Forbes.com columnist and Emmy winner Bill Tucker is back as well. Smile, Bill.
That's fun. He's smiling.
Let's get right to the Daily Download.
Should you have Secret Service protection now?
Well, we're getting the biggest crowds. You know, last night we had 8,000 people in Virginia. We had 20,000 people in Dallas, Texas. We had 35,000 people in Mobile, Alabama, and 20,000 in Oklahoma. And I know this, if I was a Democrat, they'd have it. But it's really up to them. They know what they're doing. And I assume they're doing the right thing. I would hope they're doing the right thing.
And as we mentioned, Donald Trump wants Secret Service. Looks like he's going to get it. According to an exclusive report at Newsmax.com, both Mr. Trump and Dr. Carson have received multiple death threats and terrorist chatter. Let's bring in our resident security expert. Do we have him? We don't have Mr. Gilliam. Okay, so let's talk about it amongst ourselves, shall we? All right. You already say, all right, you know what, he probably deserves it, right?
Well, look, I mean, it's not about the money. It's about whether or not, A, you've gotten legitimate threats, B, you are a major candidate, as defined, strangely enough, it turns out, by the law. We've learned how this is done. And if he's had these death threats, we know Ben Carson's had some terrible death threats, yes, the Secret Service should be providing protection.
Okay, lightning round quickly. We have Mr. Gilliam. Would you give him Secret Service protection?
Yeah, absolutely. You have to. I don't think you have a choice.
Where do you draw the line, though, is the question.
Not to spend the money. Well, there are certain qualifiers, as Rick said, that you know, it falls into where do you pull, and what are your opinions, and what's public opinion of you. I think most candidates, like Dr. Ben Carson, don't want it. It restricts their movement. It restricts their ability to interact with the people that they're supposed to be interacting with. But if it's a question of safety, you have to do it.
Tucker, quickly.
Quick answer: yes.
I like that. Pithy. Anyway. Let's bring in Jonathan Gilliam. He heads a, obviously, security firm. He's also a former special agent for the FBI and a Navy SEAL as well. Jonathan, good to see you again.
Always good to be with you all.
Okay. And he has hair.
Yeah, there's a lot of hair going on there. Well, you're talking about that a little later in the show, actually. So is this unusual for non-elected officials, Jonathan? I don't remember this happening in other presidential elections.
Actually, it did happen for Barack Obama a little bit before he actually got the nomination. So it has happened before. And, you know, look, I think the way the Republican group of candidates is going, really do see these two individuals as the two guys that are out front most. And if they're having some type of threats to their life, which I have to really kind of wonder, especially with Ben Carson, if the FBI is involved, there must be some legitimate threats. So typically the Secret Service and the FBI don't intermingle when they do their operations. So I'm kind of interested in where this is going to develop.
Well, actually, Jonathan, it's Rick. We do know at this point that he has had, Dr. Ben Carson, some pretty terrible threats. In fact, he did not seek Secret Service protection. They kind of talked him into it because the FBI and the Secret Service is very worried about his safety, and in that case, he should have it. I am curious what you think about critics. I mean, I'm not known to be Mr. Trump's biggest supporter, but I don't think that just because he's wealthy doesn't mean that he should get hit with a bill bill that another candidate wouldn't get hit with. Why are people criticizing him for wanting protection if he's had death threats?
I just think it's ignorance, and I think people don't realize that there's a difference between, civilian security firms and having a federal law enforcement agency protect you. It's a lot different. The locations that they can carry is extremely different, and the fact that they have databases and the rest of the federal government behind them, the protection doesn't even come close to what a federal agency can provide. So I think that people are speaking way out of terms on this stuff. If there's legitimate threats to anybody really that is a candidate for the President of the United States and a viable candidate, I think that there should be some involvement with the Secret Service and the FBI where they're at least looking into these things. And I think when you get individuals that are this high in the polls, we need to start taking a serious look at their protection.
Jonathan, it's Heather Hansen. We saw this with Reverend Jesse Jackson. He needed to get Secret Service when he was running for president. We saw it with Barack Obama. What do you think is the consistent factor now that we're seeing with both Ben Carson, 3 of those gentlemen happen to be African American, as well as Donald Trump? Do you think that it is there's a prejudice involved there? Do you think that it simply has to do with big opinions are getting the type of action that needs Secret Service involvement? What do you think it is?
About 30 seconds, Jonathan.
I think that really comes from where the threat is in itself is coming from. With Dr. Carson, it could be either way. With Donald Trump, we know that he has the guy from Mexico that's. The fact is that we don't really know because we don't know what those specific details to those threats are.
Okay. Jonathan Gilliam, thank you so much for joining us, former Navy SEAL, former FBI agent. I guess my final question actually would be if Trump wanted to hire you privately, what do you charge per hour?
I'd rather him make me Secretary of Defense.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, boy.
Time for Jonathan to go.
That will be interesting. All right, sir, we'll let you go on that note. Thank you so much. All right, so Governor Jeb Bush and Donald Trump have been going at each other over 9/11 during the past few days. Let's hear what exactly Mr. Trump said about Mr. Bush.
I don't want Jeb Bush to say, my brother kept us safe, because September 11th was one of the worst days in the history of this country.
My brother responded to a crisis, and he did it as you would hope a president would do. He united the country.
What would you have done?
Well, I would have been much different, I must tell you. Somebody said, well, it wouldn't have been any different. Well, it would have been. I am extremely, extremely tough on illegal immigration. I'm extremely tough on people coming into this country. I believe that if I were running things, I doubt those families would have, I doubt that those people would have been in the country.
So does Mr. Trump's argument hold water? Let's go to Bill Tucker first, because I have a feeling I know the way Heather and Rick are going to answer this one.
It's probably the same as I am. That's outrageous. That's a ridiculous statement to make. I was harshly critical of President Bush while he was in office, but I never, ever did I even entertain the notion that somehow he could have been all prevented 9/11 from happening.
The liberal argument that you hear a lot about George W. Bush when he was in office was that he was given warnings in August about terrorists may use planes as, I don't think they said weapons, but at least hijack. No one could have forecasted they're going to take them over and fly them in the planes in the Pentagon. So is this all just about the fact that Trump hates Jeb Bush, sees him as the biggest threat because he has the most money, so he's going to go after him and connect him to his brother?
He only Donald Trump knows what his motivation is. Look, I mean, there has been criticism along the lines of he was ignoring reports. You know what? I think he was, but you know what? I do not. Ambiguous. Yeah, I don't blame President Bush for what happened. I think it's outrageous to do that. It's another one of these leaps too far by Trump that won't hurt him at all.
That's what I was about to say. Well, hurt him with his base or his voters.
And actually, see, his base can fall back on the fact that 4 of the 19 terrorists were here on expired visas. So there's always a kernel of truth to the things that he says, and his supporters can take that kernel and use it in support of that argument. I mean, there were people here that wouldn't be here if everything was handled perfectly.
I think the Trump strategy is to always connect Jeb Bush to George W. Bush.
Absolutely.
And even as conservatives, they like George W. Bush as a person, probably didn't think he was the greatest president in the world, felt that he spent too much, so on and so forth. So I think that's part of the strategy, no question. Okay, so share your thoughts on Secret Service protection and the war between Donald Trump and Jeb Bush by going to newsmaxtv.com/comments. It's right there below. Yep, there it is. Coming up, will Vice President Joe Biden run for president? Big news tonight.